guys, so this is our first video for lab. This is going to be walking through blood flow through the heart. This has a diagram posted on Blackboard for you to follow along with. You can tell my pictures are not all that great. I am not awesome at drawing. What I've done here is I've drawn the two sides of the heart and I kind of separated them so that everything can stay clear. So the right atrium and the right ventricle, the left atrium and the left ventricle, but really they're together so that this pulmonary trunk and the aorta are sort of like looping over each other, which just makes the picture harder to draw and harder to see. So I've done them separately, and it kind of does help to think of them separately as two separate things. So the right atrium and the right ventricle are working at the same time as the left atrium and the left ventricle. So the two atria will pump, then the two ventricles will pump at the same time. So the atria, then the ventricles, the atria, then the ventricles, always like that, unless something's wrong. So what's happening is the right atrium is receiving blood from the body. The left atrium is receiving blood from the lungs. The atria is where blood comes into the heart. So from the right atrium, this is blood from the body. And into the left atrium, we've got blood from the lungs. And then the ventricles pump the blood away. So the left ventricle is pushing blood out to the lungs, and the left ventricle is pushing blood to the body. So let's just follow one drop of blood as it makes its way through the heart, around the lungs, back into the heart, and then out to the body. So the blood is coming from the body. If it's coming from the head and the neck, shoulders, arms, it's going to be coming in through the superior vena cava. If it's coming from under the heart, it's going to be coming up through the inferior vena cava. So together, the vena cavae, so two vena cavae. Here comes the blood into the right atrium. Now this blood is deoxygenated, not 100% deoxygenated, it's just been depleted of oxygen by the cells in the body. It's been used up, essentially. So that is why these vessels, the vena cavae, tend to be blue if you look at them on a picture or in a model. So typically veins visit the heart, veins go towards the heart. And arteries go away, so away from the heart. And typically a vein will be blue, except for the pulmonary circuit. And then for the arteries, they will typically be red, and again, except for the pulmonary circuit, and I'll explain that in a second. So when you're looking at pictures or models, you'll see the veins being blue and the arteries being red, except for anything that has to do with the lungs, anything pulmonary. They'll be opposite. And the reason why they do that, it's not that they're blue or they're red in the body, it's that they are using blue to denote deoxygenated blood, and they're using red to denote blood that has oxygen, which is typically the case. Usually the veins that are going towards the heart are going to have depleted of oxygen, so they'll be this blue color, and the arteries are going away from the heart, so they will typically have oxygen from the lungs already picked up, so they'll be red in color. So back to our drop of blood. It's coming in from the body through the vena cavae. It goes into the right atrium. Then it's going to go down into the right ventricle. When the right atrium contracts, it pushes the blood down into the right ventricle, and also when both of the chambers are relaxed, it can just kind of trickle down in. And there's a valve there, so this will be the tricuspid valve on the right, which you'll see in lab in the next few days, but we'll just call this an AV valve for now. So an atrioventricular valve, which is a fine name for it for the moment. And that keeps the blood from flowing back up into the atrium when the ventricles contract. So the blood goes down into into the right ventricle. The right ventricle contracts, that AV valve closes so the blood doesn't go right back up into the ventricle, and the blood's going to go up instead through another valve, the pulmonary valve, which you'll see in the next couple days. But it goes up through into the pulmonary trunk. This is an artery. Anytime you see trunk, it's going to be an artery, but it's blue. It's the same deoxygenated blood. It has not gone to the lungs yet to pick up the oxygen, so there's the exception. And it goes into the pulmonary arteries, which go to the left and the right lungs. Now there, the blood is going to pick up oxygen, so it's going to become red in color, but it needs to come back, so we know that veins go towards the heart, so the blood coming back from the lungs is coming in through the pulmonary veins, but these are red. So instead of being blue like veins usually are, they're going to be red. So the blood comes back into the left atrium through those pulmonary veins, down into the left ventricle. And again, there's another AV valve. This is the bicuspid valve, which you'll see in a couple days, but for now we can just call it the AV valve on the left side. So that is going to prevent the blood from going back into the left atrium when the left ventricle contracts. So the left ventricle contracts, it goes up through another valve, the aortic valve, which you'll learn about, up into the aorta, and then out to the body. So in through the vena cava, which are big veins, into the right atrium, then the right ventricle. Then up through the pulmonary trunk, to the pulmonary arteries, to the lungs, then back through the pulmonary veins, into the left atrium, down into the left ventricle, up into the aorta, and to the body. So it's really just an easy series of steps. And let me actually just write them out. So we've got the vena cava to the right atrium. Then we have the right ventricle. Then we have the pulmonary trunk into the pulmonary arteries. Picks up oxygen from the lungs, goes back into the heart through the pulmonary veins, and this time it's going to enter into the left atrium. Then it goes down into the left ventricle, and then up into the aorta to the body. So on the test, which is what you're all probably wanting to know, is how I would ask this sort of stuff on the test, I might say blood flows from the vena cava to where? So it would be like a fill in the blank kind of situation. You'd say right atrium. Or I might say blood flows into the right atrium from the, and you would say vena cava. And I could pick any step of the way. So blood goes into the left ventricle from the left atrium. Or blood goes from the left ventricle into the aorta. So just knowing this is how we would ask it on the test, or how I would ask it on the test. Here though, this shows you the function of each of the parts of the heart. We're going to learn the heart anatomy very, very soon, so this is very handy to know to start to get an idea for what all these parts are, to really start to know your way around the heart. Okay, so that is it for blood flow through the heart, and that'll be it for videos for a little while, until we get to exam number 2 anyway. So that's it. If you have any questions, email me, and see you later.